When I was in school, I used to love working over the break when most of the students were off heading back home to visit family. It was a whole lot more quiet with less distractions. I worked on a small agricultural campus as part of a research team. We were studying Arctic plants. We had moved into a new building and everything was brand spanking new and shiny, so you would think there would be no problems. But that was far from the real story. As I said, I was working over the break, and the building was deserted. I was doing my research and listening to some music when I heard a thumping sound between songs. Thought it just might be my music, but then I pulled off my earbuds and I could hear it coming through the walls. It sounded far away. I was on the second floor and I guessed it was coming from below me. It would come and go, and when it stopped for a bit, I just went back to work. A few minutes later, it started again, and this time I picked it up through my earbuds during a softer song. So that meant it was getting pretty loud. I think I felt it through my feet, through the floor, but I wasn't sure. I just knew I could no longer ignore this. I thought maybe somebody was trying to get into the building. I took off my earbuds and saved my work on my computer. I made my way down the hallway slowly and steadily. I passed a lab area and was about to enter the stairwell when I heard a sink turn on behind me. And the weird thing was, there was nobody on my floor. I stood still, listening for any other sounds like somebody talking or footsteps, but all I heard was the sound of running water. Meanwhile, the thumping sound was still coming from downstairs. I doubled back and rounded the corner and I saw a sink with water running full blast, but there was nobody in sight. There was no way somebody got past me, so the hairs on the back of my neck stood up a little. I just stared at the water running and wondered, how was this happening? Eventually, I broke out of my fear and walked over to the sink. I shut off the water, and for a moment the place was quiet. No pounding or water running. I felt a bit of relief, and then the thumping started again. And this time it sounded more urgent. I headed down the stairs and made my way towards the sound, which was louder now as I was getting closer. It was coming from the front of the building near the loading dock and cold storage where Arctic specimens were stored. Part of me said just leave it and call somebody else to check it out, but I wondered if somebody could have locked themselves in the freezer. The pounding continued. I rounded the corner for the specimen room and saw various containers, some for drying out plants and the freezer for cold storage. The sound was definitely coming from the freezer. The door was vibrating with each hit. Then I remembered there was a handle inside to get out, so if somebody locked themselves in, they could just get out. So what was pounding on the door? I stood there frozen, not knowing what to do. Whatever was inside wanted out, and for some reason I knew I shouldn't open that door. The pounding seemed to get louder and the door shook. Almost simultaneously, my phone rang and an alarm went off. I almost jumped out of my skin. I answered the phone. It was my boss telling me to get out of the building as he'd gotten an alert that there was a gas leak in the building. I started to ask about the freezer and the pounding, but they cut me off and said I had to leave immediately. I decided not to argue, as I really didn't want to know what was in that freezer. The pounding continued as I ran away. The building was closed for what they called a gas leak, but eventually I was able to go back to work. I checked back on the containment room, and the freezer unit was just empty. Something told me not to ask questions, but I knew it was not a gas leak that caused what happened that day. To this day, I do not know the truth. I was a student at a large Midwestern university, and like any student, I had to do a ton of research at the library. It was a great place to get away from my roommates and focus on my work. I spent many hours in that great old place, which was built back in 1912 and underwent a big renovation a few years back. It was nearing finals week, and I was back in my favorite place in what they called the stacks, which was where there was nothing but shelf after shelf of books. There were 5 floors of the stacks. It was quiet and secluded, which was exactly what I needed for my research for my classes. Nobody went up there except the janitors and some super nerds doing deep research. So I was there getting deep into my research when I heard the sound of footsteps coming my direction. It could have been a library worker or somebody else looking for solitude, but the footsteps kept going on without anybody passing my location. I finally got up and looked down the stacks, and there was nobody there, and the footsteps had stopped. I just thought I'd missed the person, and I went back to my work. I got in a zone when I heard the footsteps again. This time I quickly looked down the rows of shelves and saw nobody. I called out asking if anybody wanted help and got no response. Then I heard the sound of a book hitting the ground a row over from me, and I almost jumped over to the next row to see a book on the ground, but nobody near it, and there was no sounds of anybody rushing away. This place is dead quiet, and there's no way anybody could get away without making any sound. I had heard stories about the building being haunted, but had written it off as folklore to scare freshmen. But this was starting to get weird. I was thinking it may be time for me to pack it up for the day and head back to my dorm when I heard the sound of crying coming from deeper in the stacks. Maybe this was the source of my strange sounds and falling books, a broken-hearted student hiding in the stacks. I worked my way down the aisles looking for the source of the sound. I moved in and out of rows of books, but I couldn't pinpoint the location of the crying. It was like it was all around me. Now my stomach was starting to turn cold with a tickle of fear. I made my way back to my stuff and was about to pack up when I looked down the aisle and saw a lady in a white dress hovering above the ground. She just stood there, and I felt my legs turn to rubber. A cold breeze hit me head on. The woman began to drift my way, and a moaning came from her. She was coming closer when I finally got my legs working. I spun and dashed back to my laptop and book bag. I gathered them up in my arms and rushed to the exit door. I could feel cold air on my back, and I saw the lady disappear into nothingness. I bounded down the stairs, bursting into daylight, my lungs burning and my legs wobbly. I knew I was probably getting some strange looks, but I didn't care. I regained my composure and headed back to my dorm. When I got there, I did some research on the library and learned that there were many stories about a woman who haunted the stacks. One claimed she lived there back when the place was a dorm and had hung herself after a bad breakup. Others claimed it was a library worker who died from a fall when the place was being built. Who really knows? I just knew I was not going back to the stacks to study anymore. The lady could have them to herself forever. All theater departments have their share of drama, but in this story we will explore the haunting in a theater of a large Midwestern university. There will be quotes from actual students included in this video where they share their frightening stories. The theater is located at the western edge of the campus next to a river. It's a newer building but still has things that go bump in the night.
But the rumors that this building was haunted that weird events happened there. I mean, it was like a picture book kind of thing you'd see on TV when you're watching like a scary story. I would never go in there.
Some have said that the ghost of a female student haunts the building and the grounds around it, walking with something in her arms. The story involves an unsolved murder that happened outside the building, and the victim of this murder makes its home here for some unknown reason.
Yeah, this is a creepy story. This guy took his girlfriend there and ended up raping her there, and she was also killed there. So, yeah, I would say I definitely got strange vibes. And, to this day, it still kind of gives me the creeps.
The spirit of this girl wanders the building and the area around it. She carries what some believe is her unborn child.
We started hearing this voice. We talked about what we heard. It wasn't me. It was chilling because we knew no one else is there, and we began wandering around the building, and we heard this weird noise.
The building has been explored by paranormal investigators.
So I think there is some truth there. You can look it up online. There was a group that visited the building to document what was going on. These people were like actual amateur ghost hunters or whatever. They checked out the building, and when they came out, you could see that they were rattled. They didn't want to talk about what they saw, and I don't think they ever did anything with the footage they shot there.
After their investigation, they never returned to the building or shared their findings.
But there was something in their eyes. Something lost and haunted. All these days afterwards, I could tell the spirit haunting the place is the woman that was killed there and her baby.
While most people don't know the macabre history surrounding the building, some who are more sensitive have seen things that they will carry to their grave.
Also, part of the story is that she is seen carrying like a baby. It was really chilling. Many people have actually seen her on the bridge with like her unborn baby. People have seen like that same thing that I've seen, but I was terrified. Why are they there? Who knows? Maybe they're mad that they died early and want to get to the next world or something.
This campus has had many stories of hauntings and supernatural occurrences. This theater, a place of the arts, is still inhabited by the spirit of this poor girl who wanders the halls looking for some kind of justice for her loss.